Well, good morning. Welcome to Summit Community Church. Great to have you guys here today. My name's Ryan. I got a pretty sweet gig. I get to serve on staff here. And along with the rest of the staff, we kind of get to hold down the fort, so to speak, while Pastor Nate is away on some extra time of rest and relaxation. Well, hey, I was here Wednesday night. I had a meeting, and as I'm walking out, I noticed that Get Connected is happening in the lounge. This is a place where we had probably 20 to 30 people in there, and Get Connected is a thing where people come in, get connected, where I think that's what happens in there. I'm actually not even really sure, but I assume that was taking place. So I just go in there and I say hi, wave at a few people, and as I'm walking out, someone walks out and they say, Ryan, hold on, I gotta talk to you about something. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, what's up? And she says, what kind of pranks have you planned for Pastor Nate when he comes back? I said, wow, okay, yeah, we could definitely have a conversation about this. And I said, honestly, I haven't even thought of anything yet. She goes, oh, well, I have. Let me tell you all the things. And she starts listing all these pranks that she wants us to pull on Pastor Nate. This is great. So if you're here and you have any ideas on how we can prank Pastor Nate, feel free to talk with me after service, and I would love to hear any and all the ideas that you may have. Well, hey, we continue a series here today called Rooted, where we're building and growing, thriving families. And today we're going to kind of dig down deep into the soil and get to the root of what it means to really build thriving families. Question for you here. Have you ever observed your kids doing something that you don't approve of, or say something that you know is wrong, and you're about to address it, you're about to approach them and let them know how this was not okay, how this was not right, but then you quickly realize that you actually do and say the same thing, that they learned that behavior, or they learned that word or that phrase actually from you. Oh, that stinks, right? Like, I hate it when that happens. Something that I really enjoy doing here is I enjoy serving in Summit Kids in preschool. Like, oftentimes I'll go back here, I'll serve in the preschool. And one of my favorite moments is when the parents come to pick up their kids. And you could quickly realize what kids go with what parents. Because kids mimic the behaviors and the mannerisms and the temperament of their parents. Like, if we were to take all of the kids out of Summit Kids right now and bring them in here, it wouldn't take us very long to observe and realize what kids go to what parents. Because kids mimic and model the behaviors and the mannerisms of their parents. And not just when they're children. Even when kids become adults, they continue to mimic the mannerisms and the behaviors of their parents. Like, here's a picture of my dad and I taken 13 years ago. Yeah, that's at my daughter's 4th birthday party. I'm the one with the crazy hat on. I don't even remember what the theme was, but there's my dad and I, just natural. We're not posing for a picture or anything in this stance right here. But it's not only that. It happens in a lot of ways. Like, have you ever done something or said something, and then after you did it or said it, you realize, oh my goodness, that is something that one of my parents would do, that I said I would never do. Does that ever happen to you? That stings almost even worse sometimes. And then sometimes it all plays out in front of us all together. It was a couple years ago. I'm in the kitchen. I'm making a snack. My daughter's sitting down on the couch. She's watching something on TV, a movie or something. And then I overhear her start saying things like, oh, this is ridiculous. This is so dumb. That would never happen. And I'm like, hey, will you stop critiquing whatever you're watching? Can't you just sit there and watch it and enjoy it? Man, who does that? So then I make my snack, sit down on the couch, watching the movie with my daughter, and just a few minutes in, I start going, this is so stupid. This is so unrealistic. This acting, this plot, this is terrible. And then I realized I've been doing that for as long as I could remember. She learned that behavior from me. But you know who else does that? My dad. And he's been doing that for as long as I can remember. Sit down, watching a movie, my dad, oh, this is dumb. This is so unrealistic. That would never happen. Like father, like son, like father to daughter. Or I know if I ever want to get my wife agitated, I point out to her the times that she is acting just like her mother. I say, that is so something your mom would do. What? Don't ever tell me that. And she loves her mom, and her mom is great. But here's the point. All of us think of our families in good ways but there's also some things that we all know about our family that are just a little bit quirky, a little bit weird, and a little bit off. A harsh reality is this: we are all either a reflection of or a reaction to our parents. The reasons we say some of the things we say, do some of the things that we do, feel the way that we feel, respond to criticism the way that we do, how we handle conflict and confrontation, how we respond to anxiety or the things that make us anxious or sad. A lot of that is because we are all a reflection of or a reaction to our parents. There is something about our past that triggers a response. It's why if you've ever been to therapy, like I have, you sit down, you talk to the therapist, you unleash all the issues that you have, the laundry list of things, and then they look at you and they say, well, tell me about your parents. Tell me about your childhood. What was it like growing up for you? Because they know that has a major impact on our lives and who we are today. So that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a blessing that comes with families, absolutely. And there's also, if we're completely honest, there's a little bit of dysfunction that comes in families as well. And the Bible talks a lot about this. So let's get into this today. You guys ready for this? Okay. You're like, I don't know. Actually, if I would have known this was it, I may have stayed home. That is so something your mom would have done. Anyways, Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 1. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So God calls Abram to go and to be a conduit of his blessing into the world, a world that is spinning out of control. Hey, I'm going to make you into a family, and your family is going to be so great, and I'm going to bless your family, and you're going to go and bless other families, and other people will be blessed because of you. So that's what Abram does. He says, okay, let's do it. So he packs up his stuff. He's like, let's make this happen. Him and Sarai, his wife, they go, they make it happen. But notice what happens just 7 verses after this. 7 verses later. Genesis 12 and verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. So he was about to enter Egypt. He said to his wife, Sarai, I know that you are a beautiful woman. I know what a beautiful woman you are. Man, what a great guy. Thinks his wife is beautiful, compliments her. But then he says this, when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is my wife. Then they will kill me, but let you live. You can't make that happen. So say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. It's all about me. I'm a narcissist, okay? I need to be safe. I need to be okay, but we'll put your neck on the line, all right? When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. Oh my goodness. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, because apparently that was a thing, male and female servants and camels. Okay, Abram tells his wife, here's what we're going to do. These people are going to think, okay, we need to tell them that you are my sister. Because if we say that you're my wife, they're going to treat me unfairly. Okay, they're going to treat me bad. But this is all about me. So he's lying, he's conniving, he's manipulative, he's deceitful, and he is a narcissist. It is all about him. But here's the thing, this isn't just a one-time deal. So later, Abram's name is changed to Abraham, but that's about the only thing that changes about Abraham. Because we go further, down to chapter 20. It says, now Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar, and there Abraham said to his wife Sarah, she is my sister. Wow, here we go again. Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, you're as good as dead, bro, because of the woman you have taken. She's a married woman. So this is a habitual sin in Abraham's life. It's a struggle for him. He lies, he manipulates, he doesn't protect, he's a narcissist. It's all about him. I got to be safe, but I will put your neck on the line. He basically pimps out his wife. What is up with this dude? So, but this is not only in his life. It lives on in Abraham's son. Abraham and Sarah have a son together named Isaac. And keep in mind that the blessing or the promise is now passed down to his son. So now Isaac has that promise and blessing to go out into the world and be a blessing. If you were here a couple weeks ago, we talked about biblical manhood and we talked about Isaac's life and Rebekah, a little bit of that. So here's what happened in Isaac's life, Abraham's son, chapter 26, starting in verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land besides the previous famine in Abraham's time, Isaac's dad, and Isaac, Abraham's son, went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines in Gerar. Skip down to verse 7. When the men of that place asked him about his wife, here's what he said. She's my sister. Wonder where he learned that from. Because he was afraid to say, she's my wife. He thought the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah because she is beautiful. Wow. Almost an identical story. Sound familiar? The same king, same place, like father, like son. But it doesn't stop there. Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Esau was the oldest son, and now the blessing and the promise would be passed on to the oldest son, Esau. But Jacob has a different plan. Jacob's like, okay, I've learned how to manipulate, I've learned how to deceive, and I've learned how to lie, so maybe I could put that into practice in my own life. So then here's what happens in chapter 27, verse 18. He, Jacob, went to his father Isaac and said, my father, yes, my son, he answered. Who is it? Jacob said to his father, I'm Esau. So he lies, he manipulates. I've done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, how did you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come near so I can touch you. Now Esau, the oldest son, he was known as this like really hairy guy. So Jacob thought, okay, in order to deceive my dad, who's now very old and he's going blind, in order to deceive him and manipulate him, I'm going to put fur on me. So then when my dad feels me, he's going to think I'm Esau. He's got it all planned out. Man, this guy, I wonder where he learned this from. So Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. Are you really my son Esau? He replied. I am. Quit asking questions, he replied. Then he said, my son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing. So here's Jacob, lying, manipulating, planned the whole thing out, all in order so he could get something to gain out of this. So not only is the sin in Abraham, but it lives on in Isaac, and then in Jacob, and then the story continues. Jacob grows up. Jacob has a bunch of kids. And then here's what happens next in Genesis chapter 37, starting out in verse 2. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. He's the youngest, he's a tattletale. Some of you know all about that. Now Israel, who's also Jacob, a different name for Jacob, so Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe or a coat of many colors for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So the brothers of Joseph say, here's what we're going to do. Maybe we can kill him and get rid of him for good. But then they think, wait a second, what if we sold him into slavery? We could make money out of this. There could be something that we could gain out of it. Then we could cover the whole thing up. We could lie. We could deceit. We could manipulate. What's the big deal? Our dad did it. Our grandpa did it. Our great-grandpa did it. So why not us? So here's what they do in chapter 37 and verse 31. Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father, lied, and said, hey, we found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe. He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son for many days. Notice this part. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him. They were the ones that sold him into slavery and set this whole thing up, and now they're comforting their dad? What jerks. But he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will continue to mourn until the day I join my son in the grave. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Wow. And you think your family is dysfunctional. Yikes. This pattern of lying, addiction, deceit, manipulation, narcissism from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob and then to Abraham's great grandsons. We see the sin live on from one generation to the next. And this isn't unique to just this family. Like we could go through the line of Jesse, like from Jesse to David to Absalom to Solomon to Rehoboam, where there is this pattern of adultery, murder, deceit, addiction, like all of these things. This happens all throughout the Bible. And perhaps you've witnessed patterns in your own life and your own family line. There's maybe abuse, abandonment, addiction, all sorts of things take place. So what do we do about that? Like, how do we handle those things? Like, how do we get to the root of the issue? What does that look like? Well, check out Exodus chapter 20. This is God speaking, sharing his nature and character of what he's like. Exodus chapter 20, verse 5 says, "You shall not bow down to worship to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God." And notice what he says here. "Punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." All right, what does that mean? First off, God is not saying that kids get punished for their father's sin or for their grandparents' sin or for what their grandma did or what their grandfather did. God's not saying that I'm going to punish kids because of that. But there are some key things that he is saying here that I think we need to recognize and I think we need to see. Number one is this: generational sin is a very real thing. Meaning, the bent towards a certain kind of unhealthy behavior, the bent towards a certain kind of sin is absolutely real, and that does get passed on from generation to generation. But here's the thing, it does not have to. More on that here in a little bit. Secondly, consequences of sin last through generations. Like there are some serious effects that you're probably still feeling and dealing with because of your parents' decisions. The abuse of a mom, abandonment of a dad, the anger of a grandfather, whatever that might be, that still has a grip on your life because sin has collateral damage to our soul. And you're not being punished by God, but you do feel the natural ramifications of those things in and through your life. Absolutely. Thirdly is this. Someone's phone just going off. That's all right. Thirdly is this. On the scale of grace and judgment, grace wins. We read that God punishes the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation, but shows love to 1,000 generations. Now, I went to public school, and I'm not very smart, but thousands is way more than 3 or 4. All right? I do know that. Like, that is how God is wired. His heart is to show love and grace and mercy and forgiveness. He knows that we are wired to take on the same unhealthy behaviors of our parents, and he doesn't want us to. So he shows us in advance through our family line what happens when we do. And he does that out of grace and love and mercy because he does not want you to do that. Point being is that our family line has a massive weight on who we are today. There are things that your parents have said or done or have not said or not done that have massively impacted who you are for better or for worse. There's people here that your mom abandoned you maybe at a young age, or maybe you had a parent pass away when you were young. Like that has a grip, that has an effect on who you are. And the point is that both good and bad things have happened to us. We all carry the good, the bad, and the ugly into our present and possibly even into our future. Like Abraham, he did pass on a lot of blessing. Like in a lot of ways, Abraham was great. He was a man of faith, but he also had a lot of flaws, and he passed that on too. Passed on a generational blessing and kind of a generational curse all at the same time. And what often happens, especially if our past is laced with pain, we look to other things to get our emotional needs met. We tend to medicate ourselves with work and busyness, trying to prove to that family person, that family member who said to you, you will never amount to anything. So we medicate ourselves with work and busyness and trying to prove that we can be successful. Or we medicate ourselves with laziness. or we medicate ourselves with codependent, unhealthy relationships, all while treating the symptom, but not the root of the issue. And when we try to medicate ourselves on other things, we just end up right back to where our mom was, or our dad was, or our grandparent was, because behavioral patterns will manifest when we ignore the root of them. Here's a quote from Ronald Rolheiser. It says, "Whatever pain is not transformed, it is transferred." How true is that? Let me read that again. Whatever pain is not transformed is transferred. See, we have the opportunity to look at our past pain with hope. Because when we do, we have the opportunity to transform the pattern, thus transforming the future and not transferring it. And here's the thing. I know there's probably people here right now, and you're thinking, dude, this is fine. Like, this is great. But you don't understand, bro. My family's great. No, nothing in my past. My parents are awesome. My grandparents, there's been no abuse, no adultery, nothing like that. My family is awesome, so I've got nothing to worry about here today. This message isn't for me, it's for other people. While I'm happy for you, I don't believe you. Because we all have something in our past, some things, some behaviors, because people are people, and it would do us all well to look deep into what has happened to us and the things that have taken place through our family line. Like, I used to think that too. I used to think, man, my parents are great, my grandparents are great, everything's fine. I don't want to dishonor my family by looking at the negative things or the weaknesses or the faults that they've done or the flaws of my family. Like, that's dishonoring. But I think the more we do that, it's actually more honoring to our family. Like, I would love for my daughter one day to say, sure, my dad was great, but here's some flaws that he had. Here are some weaknesses. And here are some things that I want to make sure aren't transferred into my family line, so I need to transform those now. That would be honoring to me for her to do that. It is honoring for us to look at our family line, to look at our parents, to look at the good and to look at the bad, and to say, what can we transform now to make sure that it is not transferred? Here's a quote from Pete Scazzero. He says, "In emotionally healthy churches, people understand how their past affects their present ability to love Christ and others." He said they've realized from Scripture and life that an intricate, complex relationship exists between the kind of person they are today and their past. Numerous external forces may shape us, but the family we have grown up in is the primary, and except in rare instances, the most powerful system that will shape and influence who we are. How true is that? You see, God absolutely redeems our past, sure, but he does not erase it. And until we grasp the depth and the power and the reality that the past and the effect that it has on us today, we simply mirror unhealthy patterns we've seen in our family. And I believe once we realize how our family of origin has had a major impact on who we are today, we'll begin to break the power of the past. So how do we do that? What does that look like? You might be thinking, oh, okay, this is, okay, fantastic, okay, but how am I supposed to do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Number one is this: you recognize it. You simply identify it. Who are the people, what are the events that have helped shaped who I am today? Like for me, like I said, my family is great. There hasn't been abuse, there hasn't been adultery, things have been fine, look all the way down the line. But what I've discovered about myself, after taking a look back at my family and just doing a little bit of self-evaluation, is that I do have a bit of this like skeptical, cynical, almost judgmental nature about myself, and I don't like it, but I often ignore it. Like, I don't think of myself as a judgmental person, but I am an idealist, and I expect people to act a certain way and to be a certain way, and I expect circumstances and situations to line up in the way that I want them to, and when they don't do that, oh man, I distance myself. I become cynical, I become reserved, I get this a little bit of depression moments begin to sink in because I have these high expectations of things and people, and when they don't do it, man, I avoid, I shut down, I do all of those things. I often question people's motives. I don't always lead with trust over suspicion. I sometimes hold myself responsible for other people's feelings. And what I've realized, though, after looking back at my family, I'm not the only one. A lot of people in my family do the same thing. Like my grandfather, he was this fun, loving guy. Like people, man, loved him. He was, man, just super happy. But he had a high expectation, like he was an idealist as well. High expectation of people and things, how they needed to play out. And when they didn't do what he thought that they were supposed to do, he would shut down. He would avoid. He would get angry and he would get upset. My grandma, sure, she was great, but she was a highly judgmental person and she didn't even realize it. Growing up in my family, man, we would avoid conflict a lot of times and tension. Like if someone made us mad or someone annoyed us, you don't bring that up because you don't want to offend somebody. You don't talk about that. My wife's family is the complete opposite, all right? Her family does something, her family says something that they don't like. Where's the phone? I got to call them right now and let them know how this hurt me. They should not do that. Like that's been something that we've had to work on because we're so different. I remember just like 2 days into our marriage, my wife is like, hey, you did something I don't like. We need to talk about it. What? We talk about those things? We have those conversations? This is weird. This is awkward. I don't like that. And my parents are actually here today, and they just heard exactly what I said, and they might be offended. But if they are, they're not going to say anything to me about it, so it's okay. So it's fantastic. See, I think my wife's family's crazy, and she thinks my family's crazy. So it's fine. And we've had to work some of that stuff out. But maybe for you, it's a memory, it's a moment, it's an event, it's an experience. It's maybe something that someone said to you. Maybe it's a behavior that you've seen in your mom or your dad that's kind of been passed on to you, and you have a bent and you're kind of wired to kind of take on some of that kind of same stuff. First thing, we have to recognize it. We identify it. Secondly is this. You simply take responsibility. See, our urge is to get bitter. Our urge is to get mad. It's to blame shift. It's that we almost want people to feel sorry for us. Like that's a little bit of our bent. But here's the point. Whatever experience or family we come from, the point isn't to get mad and stay mad at a family member or how you were brought up. But the point is to recognize that patterns live on and that it's our responsibility to break the power of the past. Here's the thing. Your dad's behavior does not have to have power over you. Your mom's choices and her decisions don't have to have power over you. That experience that has stirred doubt and fear and insecurity doesn't have to have power over you. And there's enough people in here to know that there's some of you that have some real heavy, dark things. And we recognize that and we identify that. And a lot of that's going to take time. It's going to take the Holy Spirit. It's going to take prayer. It's going to be a process, and it's going to be a journey. But we can break it when we choose to take responsibility. Not take responsibility for what happened to you, not take responsibility for what was said to you, but take responsibility on how we can move on from there. Because whatever is not transformed will be transferred. It's like, how often do we hear people say, it's not my fault, my mom was that way. So that's why I am this way. Or, well, I get my addictive personality and my addictive behavior from my dad. It's his fault. And while that might be true, if we don't deal with it now, our kids are going to be saying the exact same thing. It's not my fault, it's my dad's fault. It's not my fault, it's my mom's fault. And then her mom's fault, and then her mom's fault, and then her dad's fault. Just keep on saying the same thing and the cycle continues. Because whatever pain, abuse, trauma, addiction is not transformed, it is transferred. Third is this. You look at it through God's lens. See, we often look at our past, our pain, our experiences, and assume that we are slaves to it. We think there's nothing that I can do about this. It is who I am. There's nothing that I can possibly do about it. But our identity doesn't come from a reality that's been passed down to us through neglect, abuse, and abandonment, and addiction, or whatever it might be. That's not where our identity comes from. See, we mentioned Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers. Shortly after, he was falsely accused of rape, and then he was thrown into prison. He was discarded by his family, yet God had something pretty specific and something really amazing for him. See, he went through a lot of loss, he went through hardship, he went through pain, he went through struggle, but eventually he's rewarded as second in command over all of Egypt. And then one day, Joseph is there, and his brothers, the same ones who sold him into slavery, plotted to kill him, and then went home and lied and manipulated and deceived his father. One day later in Joseph's life, his brothers are there right before him. Here's Joseph. He's got his bros right there. These same guys that sold you into slavery. Dude, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? Check out what he says. Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Wow. Some of us might not have to look at our mom or our dad or whoever, but maybe we visualize this and we say, you know what you meant to harm me, it's actually some good is coming out of this. Like God is actually using it for something good. You see, we get caught up in viewing the circumstances of the past through one lens, and it's a pretty narrow one. But this text calls us to look at our past through God's lens. It forces us to ask God, how do you see my pain? How do you see my past, my experiences? What do you have to say about it? I've heard it called the redemptive turn, where God can take something bad and gruesome and wicked and could dig super deep inside of that and then take it out, and actually something awesome transpires and something amazing takes place. It's kind of like this. Hold on. I've got a guitar here. It's got the strings, it's got the knobs, the tuners here and everything. You could play this. Someone created this guitar, made it, designed it, probably dreamed about the music that this guitar was going to make, the sounds that it was going to play, the places that it was going to go, the joy that it was going to bring to so many people. Someone created and designed this to do something specific. But what if this guitar got into the hands of somebody who abused it, neglected it, abandoned the guitar, had some cruel, nasty, harmful things to say about this guitar? What if eventually the guitar didn't believe what it was actually created to be and created to do? What if through those experiences, the neglect, the abuse, all the things, the words, the hatred, the anger, the pain, the sorrow, the trauma, what if eventually this guitar said, you know what? I'm not actually meant to do that. I think I'm meant to do something else. Nick, go ahead and bring that out here. What if it said, it convinced itself, you know what, because of all that trauma, because of all that pain, because of everything in the past, I'm actually meant to be a can smasher. I'm actually designed and created to smash cans. All the pain, the trauma, the abuse, the neglect, that's my identity. That is my purpose now. That is what I am supposed to do. I feel like my purpose is gone, so this is it. It could do it, right? It could actually smash this can. What if it said, that's who I am, that is what I'm supposed to do? Yikes. So now the guitar's damaged. It's kind of messed up. It's got some pain. I don't even really know if it'll play anymore. And a lot of us, there's been neglect, abuse, some pain, some words, and you thought, maybe I'm not supposed to be that. But here's the thing. When we come to Jesus, he says the old is gone and the new has come. He says you are actually a new creation. That whatever abuse, whatever pain, whatever you thought, whatever you felt, that you thought, maybe I'm worthless now. Maybe I'm pointless. God says I could pick that up and I could make you into something brand new. And even continue to do what you're created to do. And make music and make sounds and bring joy to people. But that's who you are. I'm not going to sing for you, so don't worry. Because the last point is this. Number 4. You understand that God your Father knows you and sees you. what I've learned, what I've discovered about being a dad is that kids want to be recognized, known, seen, loved by their father. That is one of the biggest desires that they have. I come home from work 50 times before I go to bed, my son, Dad, I want to show you something. Dad, I got a surprise for you. Dad, come see this. Dad, I got a story I want to tell. He'll tell a story that seems to last 30 minutes and I'm just listening and I'm like, okay, he just wants me to hear him. And I'm like, okay, buddy, that's great. Awesome, love it. Dad, no devices. No device, because he wants me to hear him and see him and know him and recognize him. Dad, I need to show you something. Another Ninjago clip that I've already seen 20 times, okay. And I look at him and I say, buddy, that's awesome. I love that. Buddy, you are so amazing. Thank you for showing me that. And here's the thing. We never grow out of the desire to be known and loved and seen ever. That is a good desire to have, as long as we fill that desire with something that is healthy. Your Heavenly Father sees you, knows you, loves you, and is giving you attention. Every day is an opportunity for us to come to God saying, Dad, watch me. Dad, look, I want to show you something. Watch this. Or to say, how do you see my pain? How do you see my past? How do you see my hurts? How do you see my joy? How do you see all that? I mean, here's my hopes. Here's my dream. Here's my pain. Here's my insecurity. And God says, I love you so much. Thank you for sharing that with me. Where you might think that you're now useless because of what's happened to you. God says, no. You are a brand new creation. You know, last week, Pastor Joshua talked about the vine and the fruit, how we are the vine and the branches and all those sorts of things, and how we need to produce great fruit. Do you know where fruit grows the most? In the valleys. Not the peak, in the valley. That's where we have the opportunity to grow the most. Those valley moments that you remember, that you think about during your life and your childhood, that's where God is actually picking you up and molding you and shaping you and helping you to become the greatest person that God wants you to be. You know the best fertilizer for fruit? It's actually poop. I just said poop in church. There's times that you feel like you've been pooped on. You've been in the valleys. That is the opportunity that, man, fruit grows and develops the most through those situations. I love this passage in Psalm chapter 139. You have searched me, Lord. Notice what he says. You know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive, like, yeah, you see my thoughts from afar. You hear my thoughts. You discern. You see my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all my ways. For you created my inmost being. Verse 13, you knit me together in my mother's womb. You designed me. You created me. Like, you have dreams for me. You have dreams of who I was going to become, what I was going to do, where I was going to go, the people that I was going to bless, all of that. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. That's what God says about you. Yeah, that abuse, that pain, that trauma, that circumstance, that word, that hurt, that you think, man, is this all that I am? Jesus says, no. I can pick you up and you are a new creation. That is actually who you are. That stuff might be true about you, but the truest thing about you is that I know you, I see you, I love you, and you are a child of God. That is the truest thing about you. If you guys could stand to your feet with me today. We're going to pray, and then we're going to sing one last song together. So God, we lift up those